gang, it's your buddy Platt, back with another episode of One Gallon Brewing. Today we brew a cream ale. So let's go. So guys, today we got another little fun brew to do. We're going to add a couple of new things to this. We're brewing a cream ale, and cream ales are great styles for especially new home brewers because it's a style of beer that most people will drink. Even your Miller Lite, Bud Light friends, I think, would be more than glad to drink a cream ale. They're usually fairly easy drinking. They're lower ABV beers. They're not real big on hop bitterness, aroma, flavor. They're lighter bodied. Just a real nice, easy drinking beer. Sometimes a lot of people refer to this style as like a lawnmower style of beer. Just a nice, refreshing, thirst-quenching beer on a warm summer day, tough to beat, and like I said, it's something I think your friends would enjoy too. Real quick, today we're going to do a couple of new things. We're going to add a couple more tools in your bartending toolbox. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to utilize something called a Whirlfloc Tablet. Basically, it's something we'll add during the boil process that will help clear our beer. It's one thing to make beer that tastes good, but after a while in home brewing, you want to make a beer that looks good. It just helps for clarity of the beer. Also today, we're going to utilize what are called adjuncts. These are additional fermentable sugars that don't come from malted barley, which is generally the primary sugar source for our brewing. We're going to utilize two. We're going to use rice syrup solids, which are utilized in a lot of Anheuser-Busch products. That is their adjunct of choice. Also a lot of your Asian beers, the Kirin Ichiban, stuff like that, they will utilize this too. And then we'll also utilize dextrose or corn sugar. Oddly enough, it's what Bud Light accuses Miller Lite of using as an adjunct. Even though conceptually, or actually, Anheuser-Busch and other products of theirs also will use corn sugar, but not in that specific product. But anyway, these are two real popular brewing adjuncts, and they're just to add additional sugar or fermentables into there. They're a cheaper way of doing that than malted barley, but they also do tweak the body of the beer just a little bit. Real quick, before we get going, let's talk about that grain bill. A pretty small grain bill, 13.1 ounces of Pale Malt and 13 ounces of Pilsner Malt. So not as much grain as we've put in the other beers. That's why we're supplementing them with additional fermentables or adjuncts. So with that being said, let's brew a cream ale. All right, gang, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our water up to our mash-in temperature. Today we're utilizing 2 gallons of water, or 8 quarts. Remember the last video with the American Pale Ale? Did probably a little too much water. I've adjusted. Hopefully we should hit all gravity marks. Reason why I'm doing this right now, we're going to heat up our strike water just a couple of degrees lower, and we're going to mash in a couple of degrees lower. Why are we doing this? As we get further along in the brewing process, you'll learn that different beer styles will require a different mash-in temperature. Eventually, when we get to making lagers, sometimes there's multiple steps at multiple temperatures. This is something, the further along brewing, you'll learn a little bit. And part of it is that holding grains at a different mash temperature, you kind of get different things that will happen at the lower temperatures. We're going to hold ours. In the past brews that we've done, we've generally held around 154, 155. Today, we're going to hold in the around 148. Now you're like, well, that's only a few degrees, that big a deal. What happens when you hold those lower temperatures is you tend to extract more of that sugar out of the grain. You end up creating a drier beer. If you hold the grains at a slightly warmer temperature, like we traditionally do around 155 or so, you're going to get a little fuller body beer. You're not going to extract as much fermentables, but you'll get kind of a fuller mouthfeel to your beer. So today we're going to mash in a couple degrees cooler. We're going to hold at 148, and instead of a traditional 60-minute mash-in, we're going to do a 75-minute mash-in. I just want to take a second and explain that. So let's get back to brewing. All right, gang, we've brought 2 gallons of water up to 158 degrees. That's what we're mashing in at. I'll go ahead and start putting in the grains. Remember, we're going to hold this at 148, and we're going to hold it for 75 minutes. Let me make sure I get all this stirred in. Luckily, because we have a smaller mash bill, I'm a little less worried about dough balls, but what have you. Make sure we got that all in there. So I'm going to go ahead, kill the flame. We're going to let this sit for 75 minutes at around 148, and then we'll come back to yank our grains. All right, gang, so it's been 75 minutes. We've let this sit at around 148. We're now going to turn the heat back on to mash out. We're going to bring it up to 168, and then when we do, we'll go ahead and pull the grains. All right, guys, we're at 168. We're finishing up our mash out. I'm going to go ahead and kill the fire. And again, this is one of the best parts about brewing the bag. We're going to go ahead and drain our grains. Just use our little colander here. Nice and easy. We're going to let this drain off for a little bit. Then when it quits draining, I'm going to crank the heat back up, and we're going to get our wort up to a boil. All right, guys, so before we actually get up to a boil, we're going to take this time to add our adjuncts, the dextrose or corn sugar and the rice syrup solids. Because this is powdered and not grain or whatever, we don't have to cook or prep the grains. Because it's not the hops, it doesn't have to go through the boil to extract it. So as long as we just have hot wort, it's fine to just pitch this in. So we'll go ahead and pitch in our dextrose and pitch in our rice syrup solids in there. You want to give it a swirl because you don't want this stuff to sit on the bottom and possibly scorch. You want to give it a good stir, make sure everything's mixed in there. And like I said, you'll want to do this before the boil. So let's let her get up to boil, and we'll come back for our first hop addition. All right, gang, so as you see, we're just starting the boil here. I'm going to add our first hop addition. We are doing 0.15 ounces of Liberty hops. Just going to go straight in. Go! This is why you need a little extra space. You get a little kick up there. Get that quick swirl. And then we'll come back in 45 minutes for our next addition. Alright, so with 15 minutes left in the boil, we're going to add our Whirlfloc Tablet. This is what it looks like. A full tablet like this is good for a 5-gallon brew, so I just broke off a couple little pieces and we're going to throw it in there. Whirlfloc, just to remind you, is to help clear the beer. It helps process the proteins in there, and just helps us have a nice clean beer. So we'll come back for our last hop addition. All right, with 1 minute left in the boil, we're going to add our last hop addition. It's 0.05 ounces of Liberty hops. Just push those in there. We'll give this another minute to finish boil, then we'll go ahead and kill the flame and go ahead and then cold crash. Real quick reminder while we're chilling this down, we're still using the Kviek yeast, which means we don't have to chill as low as we normally would. Normally we try to get around 70. Because of the Kviek yeast, now we're just trying to get down to the 80s. So just that quick little reminder. And well, I'll go ahead and finish cooling this off, and then we'll come back to wrap up. All right, gang, to wrap up, we brewed 1 gallon of cream ale, the classic lawnmower style beer. Real quick, let's review that recipe. Our projected gravity for this recipe was 1.043. We came out at 1.042. We hit it on the nail. Projected IBUs is 14. Not a lot of hop presence in this beer. The projected ABV, 4.9. We should be somewhere between 4.8 and 5% alcohol by volume. Let's go over that mash bill. 13.1 ounces of pale two-row malt, 13 ounces of Pilsner Malt. We mashed in at 159 degrees. We let it sit at 148 degrees for 75 minutes. Then we mashed out at 168 degrees. Once we mashed out, we yanked our grains. And while we were heating up to a boil, before we got to the boil, we added 2.1 ounces of rice syrup solid, 2.1 ounces of dextrose or corn sugar. Those are our adjuncts or additional fermentables we added to our mash. At the start of boil, we added 0.15 ounces of Liberty hops. 15 minutes left in boil, we added a quarter of a Whirlfloc Tablet. That is to help clear our beer. Then with 1 minute left in the boil, we added 0.05 ounces of Liberty hops. We utilized a Kviek yeast because it's still hot in Vegas. If you're fermenting at cooler temperatures or whatever, you could use just a regular Saf Ale USO5, or they even have a California ale yeast that is kind of specific to the style, but this still should work just fine. We are going to leave this in the primary fermenter for 2 weeks, rack it off, put it in secondary for 2 more weeks. We will then bottle, leave it at room temperature bottle condition for a week, and then after that put in the fridge and ready to drink. So in about a month we will hopefully have a delicious cream ale ready to drink. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or beers that you'd like me to brew, please leave me in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Till next time, thumbs up.